The Wolfman, which I saw yesterday in Liverpool, because they started doing preview screenings on, I think, Wednesday night, so Thursday, so many people may have seen it. Adaptation of classic myth, this nominally remaking the 1941 version with Chaney, Rains, Lugosi. This time, Benicio del Toro, which I think was a great piece of casting. Then the whole thing was announced a couple of years ago, and then it was going to happen, and somebody else was going to direct it, and then it fell down. They weren't going to direct it. Then for a while, people talked about Frank Darabont directing it, and that never happened. And then Brett Ratner was meant to be doing it, and then they filmed in 2008, and it was meant to open at the end of 2008, and then in 2009 they were back doing reshoots, and it was... You know, it was clearly a troubled production. And when you see the finished film, the trouble is up there on screen. But before we get to that, let's hear a clip, because alongside Benicio del Toro, and this is the only clip we had that has in it...
Stand by.
You know, Sir Anthony Hopkins as Benicio's dad.
I'm afraid the darkest hours of hell lie before you. I don't think they'll kill you, Lawrence, but they will blame you. The beast will have its day. The beast will out.
And then basically there's a transformation scene. Now, I went into Wolfman wanting to like it because I like the idea of somebody essentially doing, you know, an old-fashioned horror story and bringing something new to it. And as I said, I like the central casting. And in fact, Sir Anthony Hopkins does do a really good job of giving weight to, frankly, lightweight and flimsy lines. There's something about the way he talks when he has a real screen presence, that he can do speeches that are basically plot exposition but make them sound like something other than that, and he can do dialogue that in anybody else's mouth would sound clunky and terrible and make it sound better than it does. So he, as an actor in the film, demonstrates that he's worth the money that you spend when you get Sir Anthony Hopkins. Emily Blunt is a good old-fashioned heroine, kind of winsome but also strong, does a very good job of trembling and being, you know, terrified and yet brave, you know, all the kind of the classic old Gothic romance ideas. And Benicio del Toro is the wolf. So I'm sitting there going, why does this not work at all? And there's a number of reasons. One of them is, in American Werewolf, when the transformation scene happens, it was incredible to actually see, because there was the whole thing about American Werewolf and The Howling came out pretty much back to back, and there was a race as to which one would get out on screen first, because they both featured a transformation sequence which used a slightly similar latex technique in which you would actually see the face pushing forward and, you know, see transformation on screen. Do you remember seeing American Werewolf for the first time? Mm-hmm. You remember that the shot when you first see his face literally going from being a human face and his snout pushes out and you think, blimey, that's incredible. And even now you look at it, I mean, it is latex technology, it's not CGI obviously, and to some extent you can see the joints, but it's still an extraordinary transformation sequence. And he cracks from being, you know, a human being into something which is running on four legs, which limbs are articulated completely differently, and everything about him is totally inhuman. Well, what they've done here is they've gone back to the sort of 1940s, well, actually from before that, classic version of the werewolf, which is an upright guy with a face which is partway between human and feral, but is still fundamentally human, and then wolfy hair and, you know, claws and big paws and big feet. So what you get when the transformations happen is you get CGI and you get makeup, all done very well, very efficiently, but essentially transforming him into an upright guy with his clothes on, looking like Teen Wolf. And because there's a fundamental problem with the transformation into a guy standing up, still wearing his clothes, still with his shirt on, with a face that still looks like the guy underneath, because it doesn't look scary. Because if you were transforming into a wolf, that's scary. But if you're transforming into what we now think of as the kind of classic old Wolfman, you do that in old movies, it's fine, because you're within the area of those old movies. You understand that its makeup design is at a certain point. I mean, all the Jack Pierce makeups, that's what you could do when they were classic makeups, but you wouldn't now do Frankenstein with a bolt in his neck and a square head, even though at the time you wouldn't, even though at the time that was a brilliant way of doing it. So it seems odd to use the advanced technology to essentially create a teddy bear standing up. And my problem was that at the heart of the Wolfman story is the whole idea of the bestial side of the man. So, you know, it's the Jekyll and Hyde thing. You have the civilized character, but the beast is within and the beast will without. And, we've all got this going on inside us. And actually what it's to do with is it's kind of metaphorical, and it's about, all your dark desires. And it's obviously tied up with sexuality. And you look at all the movies around that have, they've got, you look at the Twilight series, in which there's a werewolf contingent in that. And obviously that's all to do with sex and not sex, and, coming of age and, tensions. And yet, at the heart of the Wolfman, which has got Benicio del Toro and Emily Blunt and all the CGI technology that it needs to make this transformation seem hideously real, there's just this great gap. There's this great emotional void when he goes from being Benicio del Toro to being the guy standing up looking like the teddy bear, which is literally well executed makeup, gets him from stage A to stage B, but stage B looks incredibly old and archaic and strangely nostalgic. And what it's like is somebody took an old movie and remade it with enough of reverence for the old movie to not want to do anything to the design of the old movie, and yet spending $85 million, more dollars in the process, and throwing all this CGI at it. Plus, the reshoots are evident in as much as any film that's reshot looks like it's a kind of patchwork, and boy does it look like a patchwork. And there are individual shots in it when you go, that's a lovely misty moor, that's a great shot of an outside castle, that's an interesting way into that interior, that's an impressive backlit old-fashioned Gothic, but that's all it looks like. And here's the worst thing. It started to remind me of the video for that Bonnie Tyler song that was produced by Total Eclipse of the Heart. You remember that? It started
Turn around,
Wolfman ever did. Thank you. It started to look like the video for Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Jim Steinman did that.
Jim Steinman, not Meatloaf. Jim Steinman, who was the producer. Jim Steinman produced Meatloaf. That's why I got it so fun. So in the end, it's got a pop video aesthetic, and it's got state-of-the-art special effects, which turn him from Benicio del Toro. Actually, what would have been better is if Benicio del Toro didn't use any makeup at all. That was always the gag. People said, they're going to cast Benicio, he won't use makeup. And then Mickey Rourke is going to play a grizzled wrestler in The Wrestler, but he won't have to use makeup. In fact, when Mickey Rourke played, Marv in Sin City, he thought, he's not wearing makeup, that's just what Mickey Rourke looks like. It would have been more terrifying, or somehow better, if Benicio del Toro had just turned into a slightly more version of Benicio del Toro. And heaven knows, if you've seen him in The Usual Suspects, in which he's barely speaking, a comprehensible Earth language, he looks like he is turning into someone. He's got that whole kind of that strange, that gait when he hangs his shoulders over and his head's down like that, and he looks up from under that incredible brow that he's got, and he exudes,
with his big flappy hands.
With his big flappy hands, and he exudes some kind of strange animal testosterone. All of that is not present in the film. And final point.
Really? Do you promise?
I do. There's a lot of gore, a lot of head lopping, a lot of limb lopping, a lot of offal, a lot of stuff coming out of bodies and all that kind of thing. And I just thought, why isn't this more fun? Why is the head coming off and still talking not fun? And it's because it's just too clean. It's just too computer generated. It's just too sanitized. It's like there's no smell to the film. There's no texture to the film. It's like a model of an animal, but it has no scent.